Hello, and welcome to yet another episode of the Back to the TARDIS podcast, the podcast where we take a look at every single episode of the 2005 revival of BBC's Doctor Who. I'm Jeff.
I'm Skylar.
I'm Celeste, the Panther. Hi. I feel like every one of my introductions gets more awkward than the last one.
It's a brand, what can I say?
We're talking about Doctor Who.
Yeah, and this week we are discussing Series 4, Episode 3, Planet of the Ood by Keith Temple. This is a thing that it would be kind of nice if the show would do something like this again, where they kind of go, yeah, we kind of just, ignored the Ood last time because we had bigger fish to fry, but we're not going to do that now. And it features the Doctor and Donna going to the Ood sphere and learning more about the Ood. And yeah, I really like the whole impetus here of just being like this race did not get the time that they deserved. So we're going to go in and we're going to do a episode that properly focuses on them.
Yeah. It was one of the things where I was just like, man, if only we could get like a proper sequel to Kerblam, but that's never going to happen.
Yeah, I'm not even sure I'd want that to happen.
I mean, honestly, I feel like the decision that went into this episode was basically RTD, like, just thinking back and being like, that was kind of not a great thing. I just sort of threw a slave race out there and just sort of hand waved it away as the natural order of things. Maybe I should go back and fix that.
Yeah. Just looking at see if I can find anything about the production in it. No, I can't. Yeah, what I was gonna say though was yeah, so this starts off with you like the Ood, and I like that the very first thing that you see is an Ood ad. Very, very RoboCop Metal Gear Solid 4, just sort of immediately setting the tone.
Yeah, the commercial itself really plays like a cyberpunk satire ad.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Definitely.
one of those sad things where it's just like this would almost be considered playing it like too obvious if it weren't for the fact that there are people in reality who would be like, "Oh yeah, that's okay."
Yeah, no, in general, I feel like there's always feels like there's a site that I read a lot of, like sometimes I go and read their reviews because they were reviews released when the episodes were aired, and I want like just to see like, hey, what did people when this launched things. And a lot of the time their thing with RTD is like, oh, this is like stupidly obvious, like extremely unsubtle, and I'm like, okay, but on the other hand, it's for a good point, and B, then some of y'all motherfuckers need to start getting it.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
This is not subtle, but it needs to be said, and I think it is an important thing to do when I think this is like an important thing to say, especially considering like the last time we saw the Ood show up.
Yeah, it's like you can be unsubtle and not tell a good story, obviously, but you can also be unsubtle and tell a really fucking good story. Do you know the website The Timescales?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I've been looking
like
at that.
They're a rating group, right?
Yeah, I've been looking at that more recently. It's basically like IMDb for Doctor Who. They have like first Doctor to 13th, and they have like different levels. Like there's book ratings, there's the audio, there's the TV, of course. So I didn't know. I haven't looked up this episode's rating, but it's like it's an older site, so you can find it from like all over. But yeah, that criticism doesn't surprise me. It definitely wouldn't in this age, but seeing it at the time, it's like, yeah, I can see some people who are just like, it's an easy message, and it's like, that's the point.
Just looking right now, Planet of the Ood has an average of 7.4, and the most, like, 33% 7, 31% 8, which, that's fair. But both the written reviews are pretty well, like, pretty positive on it. But yeah, no, and I just, like, I was having a conversation, because we were supposed to do this episode last week, but we decided to take the week off because we were having everybody was having a bad mental health week, so we were just like, let's just not. And I was discussing the episode with a friend of the show, someone on our server, shout outs to Petra, and it was like we noticed that, like, in many ways this episode talks about, it's not just the, like, yeah, slavery bad, it also, like, some of this may have been us looking a little bit too into it, but it also, like, feels like it talks a lot about, like, the structure and comments a lot on the structure and the way that they got there.
Yeah, like, definitely that was a very important thing, because he sort of, you know, they sort of tried to ground it in some sort of reality in this one, because they take a lot of evolutionary biology in this episode, because he basically says, like, there's no way a, like, devoted slave race could ever evolve, because how the fuck would they evolve that?
Yeah.
And then we sort of get the backstory of, like, how they were able to be enslaved, and it's literally like they had no natural predators, and so they had to be, like, kind. They'd evolved to be, like, trusting and kind to everyone, and then the humans took advantage of that.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's very brutal, but it is like they make an attempt to ground it.
Yeah, in general, this episode is, like, surprisingly dark and brutal.
Oh yeah.
And it takes multiple angles too, like the this is skipping way ahead, but when the main, like, representative PR woman, Donna asks her, it's like, doesn't everybody on Earth know, or, like, do they not know? And she says they don't ask, same thing. And I was just like, oh man, that's some real, like, complicity.
She has a point too.
Yeah,
she's not wrong.
It's like, we all know we're part of the problem.
It doesn't make it right, but she's not wrong.
Yeah, we're all a part of the problem, but we just kind of, like, don't think about it, or we choose certain hills to stand on. Not saying you shouldn't take a stand on something like this, but it's like, it was very, like, it isn't just commenting on, like, the people doing this, it's about the people who, like, allow and don't ask or know, and they don't, like, think to confirm. Like, that was some good stuff.
Yeah. So yeah, we start with the doctor and Donna setting controls to random. Just let's get to wherever the fuck we're going. And they go to the Oodsphere, which I like. You know, very nice snowy landscape. Like, doesn't look, surprisingly, for the fact that they filmed this episode in, like, the middle of summer and it was really hot, they managed to sell it being, like, this super cold snowy planet pretty well. Like, they apparently, like, the snow was, like, bits of paper, and I'm like, that's surprisingly convincing snow for bits of paper.
They must have really taken advantage of, like, camera quality to do that.
Yeah, I think so. I was like, wow, that's impressive. So yeah, we learned that the Ood. It's interesting because, like, when you think about it, the Ood are utilized the same way in this episode as they are in Satan Pit, but here they have more agency.
Yeah, they're there for more than just background window.
They're not
dressing.
being controlled by like some malicious evil force.
Yeah. And I do like that or at least 10 kind of ties in why that was able to happen. And it's like, oh, the devil kind of, we learn in this episode, he kind of supplanted what the, I forget what they call it, the central brain or the mother brain, but he basically supplanted that, and that was how he was able to like so easily take control. It's like, it's a furthering of world building that Doctor Who basically like doesn't do, except for arguably the Cybermen and Daleks. So it was just like, hey, continuity, that's cool.
Yeah, definitely.
Can I also say I really love the idea of like multiple levels of consciousness that they have, like because they have the what is it, the like interior, they have like the interior like thoughts and stuff brain, and then they have the like psychic brain that gets covered up with the thingy, and then they have like the mother brain that connects them all, and that's a really interesting concept to me. Like it's sort of like a physical manifestation of like, I don't want to say outright Freudian because it's not exactly the like id ego super ego division, but it's still this idea of like multiple levels of thought, except manifested as legitimately different physical constructs, and that's really cool to me.
Yeah, definitely. And honestly, like it makes me think about how like I know I'm getting off track, and but Petra actually I started playing their copy of Disco Elysium, and one of the interesting thing that game does is all your skills have their own personalities and will talk to you in dialogue. So like your encyclopedia skill will like chime in like exposition, or if you see like a bottle lying around somewhere because you're like a fucked up shit cop, your electrochemistry skill would be like, hey, you haven't had a drink in a long while. I don't know. It was something that I've found interesting recently. Probably doesn't have anything to do with the episode. It's how my brain works. Let's see here. You first hear the Ood song here because they the Doctor and Donna find the body of the Ood that they the body of the Ood that
we see it in
killed,
the intro.
Yeah, the one that killed the like CEO evil corporate shit man in the intro. And you first hear the Ood song, which is, I think, one of Murray Gold's best, like, I don't know, maybe not compositions, but like the aesthetic and the way it sounds, and not the instrumentation, but the tonality of it is really good. And I like it's one of like the best ideas that he's had.
Yeah, it's very distinct. He's good at like, there are certain themes that just like slap, like you can easily differentiate Martha's, Rose's, but like this is sort of like another level. It almost doesn't feel like human music.
Yeah, or it uses like maybe not like super studied, but like ideas of like non-Western tonality to make it sound alien. I'm a music nerd, so like this is my jam. I'll get super into the weeds on this shit.
Yeah, I don't know anything about music theory, but I can't express it in technical terms, but it definitely didn't sound like the sort of rhythm and harmony you'd expect in like most music I've heard.
Yeah, or and like if you listen to like music from like Middle Eastern or Asian countries, like their traditional music sounds super different because they developed their own ideas of like music and their own music theory, I guess.
Yeah.
That does not work the same way as the same old standard Western shit, which is unfortunately the shit that gets taught in schools everywhere, even though it's based off a bunch of like 300-year-old dead white German guys. For more info on this, watch a really neat Adam Neely video that I will probably link in the show notes about how kind of fucked up that is.
I was literally just thinking about that episode. I haven't seen the video, but it's come up in my recommended like 4 times.
Dude, it's a good video. Watch it. It's very good.
I keep meaning to watch it.
It is very good. Yeah.
He's good. Yeah.
So yeah, the Doctor and Donna sneak in, use the psychic paper to get in. Another thing that I like about this is that this is one of the episodes where they actually like check and be like, hang on. They let him in, but then they also run a background check on him and are like, hang on a second.
Yeah, that was good. Is this the second Great and Bountiful Human Empire?
Yes, it is.
So this is before Satellite 5.
Yes.
Satellite 5 is the year 100,000.
Yeah, and this is 4126.
Okay, yeah, so that's
me to the question, like, how does this time scale work? Because that means there's 2 Great and Bountiful Human Empires within like a couple thousand years, and then there's a third one somewhere in between, and then the fourth one is all the way like another 100,000 years in the future.
The first one, hold on, I'm looking this up. First one has only been interacted with in audio dramas, so I don't have a time scale for that. Third one is in 79th century. Fourth one is at the like 100,000. Actually, yeah. The fourth one is at like the year 200,000. So either one of these lasted for a couple of these lasted for a really long time, or there were really long gap periods. Doctor Who timeline's fucked, man.
True.
There
facts.
is no canon. Die. The ongoing joke of people assuming that Ten and Donna are married, and they're like, no, God, no. You ever, I know, like, rule of comedy, but it always strikes me as funny that it is only, like, they didn't do it with Martha, they didn't do it with Rose. The only time people assume is when it's Donna, him and Donna.
Which is funny because they're the ones where there's literally nothing happening.
Yeah. I guess everyone else can just see how good their chemistry is.
True facts.
Yeah. Okay, let's see here.
The scene we get with the rich assholes is great. Where
Yeah,
they're showcasing the fucking like, oh, if you want to commodify your slave even more, here's different options for the translate ball.
Yeah.
And I was just like,
And
apparently not great.
Okay. Do you want to... Okay, let's take bets. Is the Simpsons still running in 4126, or is just the Simpsons still like a referential cultural force in 4126?
Wait, was there a Simpsons joke in there?
Yes,
Oh,
one of them.
Right, yeah. Oh, yeah, I noticed that. Damn, I don't know. Maybe. Okay, I'm gonna get philosophical on you here. I'm gonna say.
Okay.
I'm gonna borrow from Baudrillard's Simulation and Simulacra and say that.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I'm gonna say that dough itself is a cultural symbol, which at that point will have become so disconnected from its original context that it has basically become its own entity and has just survived as some funny exclamation by that point that is
Right, but
entirely
the
removed from any
audio
sort of
clip,
original
they
context.
admittedly, I understand that this episode came out in 2008, but they specifically use an audio clip of Homer's voice actor saying dough, which clearly means that the voice file, at least that single voice file, probably some episodes of The Simpsons, has lasted for 2,000 years.
Look,
Sure. And so now that brings us into this like sort of creepy idea of like because we're in an age where like images and like recordings of people are themselves like pieces of media which continue to survive, like what's the longevity of that? Could your voice survive for that long and continue to be used just in casual context like that? Like, think about that. Somebody who died like in this world like 2,000 years ago is continuing to be referenced without the context of it being an actual person. Like, their voice exists, but only as that single audio clip and not as any other itself. And so it's entirely decontextualized and deterritorialized from its original purpose.
I'm just saying that if there's any company that could survive until 4126, I would bet that Disney could do it and that
Fuck,
they would
you're right.
license out
Fuck,
their
you're
voice
right.
files out to a slave company. I bet they would do it.
What we didn't see is that Disney is the majority shareholder in the Ood Corporation.
Walt Disney's resuscitated frozen head is...
Yeah, no, it's literally like the straight up Futurama head in a jar.
Yeah, exactly.
Look, I just... All I want now is an Ood who's in a future story whose voice box sounds like Kylo Ren. That's all I want. Anyways,
All
Doctor
right.
Who.
Yeah. So. Oh yeah. Also, the really weird. I guess people be horny, but the really weird thing of like the fucking the voice box modifier that makes it to sound like a femme fatale type thing. I'm like, wow, that's really weird.
They're cornering the incel market.
People just be horny, I guess. I don't know. Let's see here. Okay. So yeah, the subplot here with the like head honcho Halpin and the scientist writer, they're investigating an Ood, which has clearly gone, I guess. I don't. I guess really the term is feral, even though that has its own connotations. But and they end up, they say like, oh, we have to go check warehouse 15, and there's one of the most chilling lines in this episode, which again, this episode is like fucking surprisingly brutal, where there's just the line of, I'd suggest a post-mortem, which means it's got to be dead first. It's just fucking hell.
I think, doesn't 10 call Red Eye basically like it's like rage / survival instinct?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, something like that.
Like, basically like the ultimate form of like, you got your fight and your flight, except when you fight, you like turn into venom or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
But, yeah, that was like real, like, yeah, we're gonna execute the livestock. Like there's a whole bunch of lines with Halpin. That actor does a really good job of just being like the
Yeah.
clinical asshole businessman who's just
The
like, yeah, this is what I
scumbaggiest
do.
of the scumbags.
Yeah. And narratively, I like the scientist being there. Of course, we don't find out until later that he's like actually like one of the good
Decent
people.
human being.
But it's like you can find foreshadowing of that, and it's a good way for the evil businessman to exposit to the screen. And I paid attention. I went back and looked at this scene. The scientist, you can actually pinpoint the moment where he lowers the I guess the psychic dampening field so that the red eye like increases in like time or whatever. But it's like there's some really good, like, for an episode with an, you wouldn't think of this episode as having a B plot, but because like the B plot is just as good as the A.
Yeah. No, in general, this episode, like, I guess, like, the reason people sleep on this episode so much is just like, oh, it's like the Ood episode, and it's just like a mid-season episode, and like it doesn't really pose itself as anything special, or maybe people think it's too obvious or whatever. But really, I consider this episode, like, I really consider it now, but even before then, I considered this episode like a highlight of the season by far.
Oh no, honestly, same. Like when I think about Tennant's run, like the Ood are one of the first things I think about. Like in this episode in particular, like this is one I definitely remembered, like I'd say fairly well from the first time the last time we watched it years ago. So it definitely holds up like quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
Poor Donna. First two adventures. Like, holy crap.
Yeah. She gets put real through the ringer. I do like just the visual of them walking into this fucking like this this warehouse and seeing that there's just this fucking huge brain in it, and you can hear the song in the background, and it's very atmosphere setting in a really great way.
Yeah. If I had to nitpick this, like, the Ood actually make, like, a really good amount of sense as a species with, like, there's the hind brain and there's the, like, brain they have in their hands, and that's, you know, they evolved to be, like, trusting because they had to be. But it's just like, okay, how do you get, like a Metroid-y, like, how? Like, I'm not gonna ding the episode for it because it's like, at a certain point, you just got to accept that it doesn't matter, and this is just the construction of how they made the thing. But I'm just like, the writer in me is just like, okay, how do I justify that? But yeah, it's a good, effective, like, emotional moment for sure.
Yeah, definitely. It's got like, yeah. I also would like to take a slight moment to talk about a really based thing for an episode that came out in 2008, where the Doctor makes a comment to Donna that an empire built on slavery isn't that different from your time, and Donna's like, I haven't got slaves, and Ten's like, who do you think made your clothes?
Yeah, that that was like, oop. Because you sort of mentioned earlier how like RTD, like, people say like he's being too obvious or whatever, but I feel like that one line really contextualizes like what the actual point of this episode is, which is, this kind of stuff gets normalized in society, and we just sort of accept it as like the way things are. And then that's literally the point he's making right there. Like, what, you think you're special? Like, nah, you do this shit too.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's like there's just so much about like a lot of the themes tackled in RTD and how it talks about like capitalism and imperialism and all of that is just like, it's something that the show hasn't done in over a decade. Actually, about a decade, because Moffat took over in 2010, and there are some bits like I think he got better at it when Capaldi came in, and especially like series 10 is pretty good at it, but I feel like even then he didn't do it. He wasn't as like very like to the point, straight ahead, or as like open about it as RTD was.
Yeah, I kind of noticed, like, it's probably just a coincidence, but it's like you have nine and 10 are like pretty based, like largely. It depends on the writer, of course, but like stuff written by RTD is like largely pretty based. Then 11, it's just
Pretty
like
based unless Ansem Seeker of Darkness wrote it, honestly.
exactly. But like the only thing I can
Like
think
pretty
of,
consistently based.
yeah, it's like 11 has an episode, like either his second or third episode is him finding humans who like consistently find out that they're abusing this creature to like live on this spaceship, and then they choose to forget about it. Like that's pretty like poignant, but like beyond that, I'm just like, yeah, he just kind of like fell asleep during 11 and then woke up during 12. But it's, yeah, I don't know. People who say like Doctor Who hasn't been political before, it's,
Yeah.
we can go down a
that's
whole
fucking
rabbit
stupid.
hole of that stuff, but it's just like, no, this is like, I don't know, I almost hate calling it political, because it's like, it's literally what's happening. It's literally like how so much of our modern society, and not just modern society, like hundreds of societies in hundreds of years past and thousands of years past have been. But no, it's just the woke agenda, guys. It's fine. We're all fine now.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. So yeah, I also like slightly unsubtle, but the use of the circle must be broken.
Yeah.
Which this might just be me reading a little bit too into it, but I believe that the song. Wait. No, okay. No, it's a Christian hymn. Never mind. Did not. I couldn't remember what the origin of the song Will the Circle Be Unbroken was from.
Right.
Thanks, BioShock Infinite.
Yeah, there's some good stuff done with like the Ood. I don't know if it's like culture necessarily, but the fact that they have a song of captivity, and those are like, you can draw obvious parallels to like the songs of like captivity that rose up
The
around
songs
like,
that literally
black culture.
influenced the entirety of Western music.
Yeah, exactly.
In the 20th century.
Yeah, which is like, you know, there you could get into some questions of just like, okay, how appropriate is it to like take cultures of like BIPOC people and put them onto like alien cultures? Like, that's a whole different thing. That's like,
the one thing is that, well, the thing is that the songs that they are singing are not like blues songs or anything. They are their entirely own expression. And in that case, I think it makes sense because music is music.
No, yeah, I completely agree. It's just something that like we could really get into the weeds. You could really get into the weeds of like almost every scene in this episode. It's like that. No, it's that full of stuff.
Is very deep. Yeah.
Yeah, and I wasn't saying that as a bad thing. It's just like there legitimately is a lot to talk about, and this is like one of the few episodes I think where it's like it would almost be impossible to do this justice without doing like a full on video essay.
Yeah. No, go rewatch this episode, guys. Honestly, it's super good. Super good. Oh yeah. Another thing, we have the big crane, the crane scene where they're running through the warehouse with the crane. This part feel like, in general, this episode feels like very like, it's partly because like very like cold industrial environments and snowy settings, but it's reminded me a lot of like Deus Ex or Metal Gear Solid in like the way it looks, and especially this crane set piece feels like an MGS1 set piece. And Petra also made a really nice point that although this may just be us really overthinking things, but she made a point about how the crane thing could represent how the military or private armed forces that enforce slavery are childlike in their cruelty. They just want an excuse.
Ooh, that's a good point.
Yeah.
I didn't think
I
of
could
that.
take it even further.
Uh-huh.
I could take it even further and say that the crane is sort of okay. So the crane is an impersonal method, and it's basically it has the simulation of a hand, which is a controlling thing, but it's controlled indirect, like it's an inhuman thing controlled indirectly by a human, which he is then using to try and hurt someone, and it sort of represents the way that oppressors like try to distance themselves like mentally from the violence while still doing the same thing. Sort of like
Yeah.
the doctor's point about guns and stuff. Yeah. That's something I completely pulled out of my ass, but it's like if you want, if we're
No,
analyzing
I can see that.
Why are we here? You know?
Yeah. Definitely. But yes. And yeah, the doctor makes a very good point that there's no way that the Ood can exist as they are now without without like they could never have evolved to this point in the first place. Which means that obviously someone had to have made them that way for them to get there. I also I like the fact that the PR rep 10 even literally gives her a chance to help them and like a chance to turn around, and she doesn't care. Sells him out. And I yeah, like I don't know. I feel like that has a lot to say about complacency, or how like deep in the system she is.
Yeah, that was a good moment. What you brought up about like evolution, and that being like a really good point about, I mean, we brought it up a few times about how the Ood as just a natural like submissive or like servant race like would make no sense. That brings up to mind like okay, I guess broad spoilers for Star Trek Discovery if anybody cares, but like the first officer on that ship in that show, the origin we get for him in season 1 is that he's a member of a species that is like bred to be prey and hunted for sport. And in season 2 we kind of learned that's not like the whole truth. So it's like, I don't know, I'm kind of glad to see that trope of just like the natural servant, cough, house elves, is largely going out of style.
Yeah,
no,
like I don't know how much something like Star Trek, because I'm not a big Trek buff or anything as much as I like probably want to get into it, or something like, I don't know, Star Wars or something. I don't know how much those have the concept of just like, oh, they're natural slave races or whatever. But I feel like if that is a trope, I like how this episode like hard deconstructs it.
Yeah, I can't think of anything in... Well, actually, that's a lie. I can think of like 2 examples in Trek, but like both of the times, to the show's credit, eventually it's just like, nah, actually things are a bit more complicated than that. And in Star Wars, the only example I can think of is like where it's actively shown like, no, this isn't a slave race. The Empire is just evil. But it's a thing we have to contend with, and art mirrors reality and like what people think about stuff. So it's anyways, good themes, good, much enjoyment, entertainment. I can talk. Thank you.
Yeah. Let's see. So yeah, I do like that while we've been able to hear it the second that Donna is able to like the fact that like when he makes it so Donna can hear it, she's just immediately like overwhelmed by it because it's this psychic signal. So being able to like it's not just a song, it comes with the emotions of the emotions even more than like a normal song would. And I don't know, I'm a sucker for that trope where like in some ways like we put up our defenses, and whenever there's a situation in a story, especially sci-fi, where that defense, that barrier is taken down, is like, that's great.
Yeah, special props to the well, I guess costuming, because like even though there's like no mouths or like really any traditional face beyond like the head shape and the eyes, like
Yeah.
you can feel that fucking like despair, and when there's anger, and like when the one Ood is dying at the beginning, it's just like that. It like comes across so effortlessly. But I know like working with like props and costuming and stuff for like friends projects in film class, it's like getting like capturing that is super fucking hard. And the music, because the Murray Gold is a genius, like that probably helps a lot. But it's just like this wouldn't have worked if the Ood weren't like executed well, or like just mediocre. Like it had to be like it
Yeah.
had to hit those notes, and it did.
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, and then it's shown that the Ood. This is also like, it's interesting because like it feels like obviously like the classic sci-fi, like the shit from like the 50s and the 60s, like pre-Star Trek, pre-Star Wars, pre all of that, like the shit that like my dad has like countless beaten up paperbacks for, would be, it feels like something from that, where they were like a lot more imaginative about alien races, and the idea that they literally have their brains in their hands at all times, and like the part that gives them identity or emotion is the part that is the most exposed. Like that's just such a brilliant fucking idea.
And then Doctor Who decides to have every instance of an Ood ever be one of the ones that was lobotomized.
Yeah.
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 Which, like, it kind of works for Neil Gaiman's story. Like, it makes
Yeah.
narrative sense
Yeah,
why you
no,
do that.
the Doctor's wife, that makes sense because A, they could reuse an old costume, and B, that Ood is being possessed by another force. But after that, yeah, no, it sucks.
I mean, maybe it's like none of the ones who like weren't lobotomized actually want to leave the planet.
Maybe.
Yeah, that's fair.
True. That's true. They may not even, yeah. It would be really dangerous for them to leave the planet, considering that they're carrying their fucking brains in their hands.
Look, let's just have a story about the sixth great and bountiful human empire, where there's a war between humans and the Ood. That
They can't fight. They
Hey.
have their fucking brains in their hands.
hey, Chibnall is
No.
showrunner. Don't tell me what can't happen.
I was literally about to make a joke about how Chibnall would totally do that.
Hey guys,
They fight
remember the
fascism with
Ood,
love,
please?
y'all.
Yeah.
Who cares about the original intended point of the species? We can just do whatever we want with them. They're cool extra guys, bro.
Ood Sigma is a pre-Hartnell doctor, calling it now.
Nice. But yeah, and I like that. I like that Halpin's response isn't like, oh, it's like it's inhumane, or he doesn't have a response to how inhumane this shit is. He's just like, well, the system worked. because that's all he can see. He's like, yes, it worked for him. They can't really verbalize that it isn't working for them because you're fucking lobotomizing them.
Also, it's implied that he's, like, never here. Like, that guy who's killed in the beginning is, like, the main guy, and it's just like, oh, I haven't been in this warehouse since I was 15.
Yeah. And the absolutely intentional thing of, hold on. It was like he's, fuck. Hold on. Yeah, the fact that he comes from a family dynasty and found a group of people and just started ruthlessly exploiting them is like 100%. That's 100% intentional.
Oh yeah.
So yes, the red eye starts getting spread and the oods start attacking, which, you know, I'm not gonna complain about watching douchebag millionaire bros get destroyed by the oppressed that they created. That's pretty neat.
And that one guy literally by his own gas bomb.
Yeah. Exactly. So yeah, they go into the warehouse with the brain, and Halpin explains that he's going to try and destroy it, but Ryder turns on him, which is really funny because when you think about it, he doesn't actually do shit. He just be like, "No, I wasn't working for you at all," and then immediately gets tossed into the brain. It's just like, oh, okay. That was really funny.
That has to be like a terrible death, though. Like, imagine being suffocated by a giant brain. Like,
yeah,
damn.
I don't even know why it absorbs him. That's not how that works.
Who knows?
Like, I will say the one downside to this episode is like, and the thing that immediately follows this of like Halpin being turned into an ood is definitely horrific, and I like the themes that it presents, but I don't understand how the fuck any of it works.
They like drank the fluids and that turns you into another species because
like that's not that's not how any of that works.
Yeah, that's kind of just, and you could, you know, we've sat here kind of talking about like the philosophy and the ethics and morals of this, like this, just what happens to him, just what he turns into, who he turns into, like that could be a whole separate episode. You could write a chapter on just like the merits of that. Is that okay? You know, it's not consensual, but he's, you know, this way he does less harm and they're still going to take care of him. It's not like they're tossing him in like a cliff or something. So it's just like, what the hell do you do with this? And I do think it's a very deliberate point that Donna's just like, man, I thought I knew right from wrong, but like, shows what I fucking knew. Like, it's not an easy solution, and the episode, to its credit, doesn't treat it like this. Like,
also, it is like the single biggest piece of body horror that I can think of in Doctor Who.
Yeah.
And it was apparently even more graphic, but they were forced to tone it down.
Tears off skin. Yeah, you can keep that.
That was already toned down. What the fuck was the uncensored version like? Anyways, so with that, it is like, this is, I guess, like a very slight sort of, it does feel kind of like a 45-minute syndrome, like, oh shit, we need a resolution for this. But at the same time, it's horrifying enough that I'll give it a pass, because, like, fuck, man, it's definitely memorable. Also, I like the foreshadowing here for Dr. Donna.
Yeah,
They
that's
This is, and it's one of the cases too where they literally later are like, yes, this was very obvious foreshadowing.
yeah, and the fact that it's kind of like, I don't know. There's a bunch of things where it's like this could be considered a twist or a red herring, and it's just so much is done that by the end you're just like, oh fuck, that was a thing. Like,
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
like,
definitely.
hey, we're Doctor Donna friends, and it's just like knowing what we know. It's just like, oh yeah, but at the time you're just like, yeah, it makes sense why he says it that way.
Yeah. Um. Yeah. So, anything else before we move on to ratings?
Uh, I like the type of villain that Mr. Halpin is. The fact that it's notable that it's just like, oh, I've never killed someone before. It's like that very like corporate, like
Yeah.
on paper, like clean, like we're doing everything by the book morality, and it isn't until the end where he's just like basically fully given up the charade. He's just like, yeah, fuck it, I'm evil.
Cut my losses and get out. Yeah.
Yeah, so I don't know. That's like it isn't anything new or like a new trope or anything, but it's just I don't know. I appreciated it.
All right. So yeah. Moving on to ratings. Yeah. This, as I said, I think this episode. Ooh, accidentally muted Discord. I think this episode is a highlight of the season by far. Um. I think I think the writing's firing on all cylinders. It's surprisingly brutal. I like how it comes back and recontextualizes a race that was introduced before. Yeah, it's a really stellar episode. I've just gone into great detail over the last hour why I think it's a really good episode. A plus.
Yeah, this episode continues the trend of like series 4 absolutely smashing it out of the park with like almost each installment. It's just stuff is that good. I suppose I'm counting Voyage of the Damned in that, but it's still we've had a consistent record. The costuming is great, the acting is great, the sound is great, the music, like everything is, as was said, firing on all cylinders. And it's like, I don't know, to me it's like a staple episode of New Who, beyond the fact that it continues the Ood being a thing, and the Dr. Donna. It's just so solid. I'm giving it a solid A.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely an iconic New Who episode, even if it's not like regarded as like that sort of top level. It's definitely still like one of these like solid Doctor Who episodes. You know, like it's the kind of episode you think about when you think of Doctor Who. Like this is just
Yeah.
a very. I feel like that circular speech, but it really is. It comes across like heavily as like something you'd expect from RTD era and Doctor Who.
Yeah.
It's just like,
This might just be me being like a massive fucking fan wankery RTD fanboy, but this episode I feel like is an episode that I can point at and be like, this is what the show used to be. This is why I bitch a lot about its current quality, because I know it can do better. Because it's like I have a high bar because of episodes like this, because I know that it can do better.
yeah, absolutely, and you know, it's good in a very different way from like the Moffat era good episodes.
Yeah.
Like, you know, we were watching season 9 on our server, and I was just sort of rewatching this episode and being like, wow, these are really good, but they're good in a very different way from this episode, as we're going to see later. And like, but this episode, what it does really well is it has just this sort of raw, like grittiness to it. To like, it brings this sort of grittiness to everything it does. It brings this grittiness and like, I don't want to say like harder sci-fi, but it's definitely like it's less. It's definitely harder than some of the later stuff, and it feels more
Yeah.
grounded in like this genuine.
It's
Yeah.
more Deus Ex than Star Trek, I guess would be
Yeah.
like the
Yes.
utopian side.
Or,
Yes.
or Deus Ex the first game as opposed to the modern Deus Exes, shall we say.
Yeah, and
Uh,
so yeah, I think
yeah.
I don't think it quite reaches the levels of like some of
Yeah.
the like really standout episodes, just because there's not as much going on with characters in this
Yeah.
episode. There's not too much character writing, but it is still definitely a solid episode. So I'd say like
Yeah.
9.
It does feel very old sci-fi, I think.
Yes.
Like old like sci-fi lit. Yeah. Anyways, next week we will be discussing episodes 4 and 5, the Sontaran Stratagem and the Poison Sky. So yeah, until then, I guess we shall move on to our next segment. So this week we are discussing series 2, episode 5, Adam by Catherine Tregenna. I will apologize. I'm not going to have necessarily as much to contribute this week because while I was able to rewatch the Doctor Who episode before we recorded this week, I did not get a chance to rewatch the Torchwood episode, so I'm going off week-old memories because obviously this week's episode got pushed back a week. I will say I do like, this is another thing of Torchwood's strength is when it can take sci-fi ideas and explore them in its setting and it's in its low budget, because this is a really good low budget sci-fi setting. Like the only effects that I can think of is at the very end when Adam starts to like disappear. Like otherwise you're dealing with a very cheap episode that has a very interesting idea of what if this alien inserts itself into, like, the way it works is it inserts itself into your memories and that's how it lives. And the fact that it inserting itself into people's memories fundamentally not only fucks with their personality, but fucks with their own memories, because you have to make the space for you to exist and for them to not question your existence.
I'm gonna be. I never thought I'd be this person, but this reminded me, and I know this episode came out before what I'm about to talk about, but there's like a Rick and Morty episode where it's like
Yes,
that memory
yes.
changing entity, and I'm sorry.
No.
But it made me think of that, and how like you can pass that off as like the Rick and Morty is obviously leaning more towards the comedic side, but this was just genuinely like terrifying. And again, like Torchwood is best when doing like a lot of like character stuff and using the darker, I guess, backdrop and use of its setting to like do that character stuff. And this is another example of kind of Torchwood using its toolbox well, in my opinion. We get some more background on Jack, which is always cool.
Yeah.
I'm learning more and more that basically, like, if you just like how I did until recently, if you just know Jack from Doctor Who, like, he's basically a different character. And, like, his backstory just, like, basically doesn't matter at all, aside from, like, omnisexual, horny 51st century man.
Yeah.
But here it's, like, it's a lot more, like, baggage and stuff to deal with. Yeah. So it's, like, that continues to be good.
Rewatching Torchwood has really helped me to understand, because, like, when Jack showed up in Fugitive, I remember my mom being like, this isn't the Jack that I'm particularly interested in, because she was super into Torchwood, so she likes that interpretation of the character and the character that has that baggage and isn't just all horny, all charm all the time. Yeah, it is interesting to realize, like, yeah, it's weird to be like, yeah, this Jack is like when he shows up, it's weird because like you get the sense even when he reappears in series 3 that there's still like elements of that development from Torchwood and like the 200 years that he spent trapped on Earth before that. Whereas in Fugitive, he's just back to like slightly more developed empty child Jack.
Yeah, it's like, Chibnall, you wrote Torchwood Jack. How are you doing this?
Because the kids aren't allowed to see the horny Skylar.
He's horny in that. Whatever. I give up.
Okay, sorry. The kids are not allowed to see the angst Skylar.
Kids are born with angst in this world. It's 2020.
I just wanted to go back and comment on the Rick and Morty thing, because I was literally like, I was sitting here like right as you started introducing the episode, and I was like, wait, now that I think about it, I've heard this concept before, and I'm like, where did I hear that from? And then you said Rick and Morty, and I was like, oh my god.
Oh no.
And the thing is that Rick and Morty episode is actually really good.
It is.
So, like, yeah, I mean, I'm not ashamed to compare it to that. Rick and Morty is a good show, and I will not apologize for that.
Well, yeah, okay, sure.
And
I'm not gonna debate you on that. I grew out of it, but yeah.
So, I mean, yeah, this episode is like, I don't think it's great, but it's pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, like it's the thing of like, I don't know, maybe we'd have looked at it more charitably in a week where we had to watch a really shitty episode. But instead, we watched a really good episode and a really good killer season of Doctor Who. So, like, in comparison, it's like, yeah, it's good, but, like...
Yeah, exactly.
I do really like I guess, like, I'm not going to get, like, super into specifics this week, because, as I said, I don't remember much. I really do think that last scene where it is just the two of them is very good. Like, in general, like, I think, like, when this show is able to put two characters in a room and have them play off each other in a way that isn't like Gwen and Owen randomly deciding to start fucking in series 1, it works pretty well. Like, for example, when, like, the scene where it's just Captain Jack and Captain John and Kiss Kiss Bang Bang. Something like that. Yeah.
We learn more about Gray Thane, right?
Yeah, we learn more about who Gray is and why he matters to Jack.
Yeah, like, see, another example, like, just watching Doctor Who, it's like, Jack has a brother? What?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I like the, and I like that, like, Adam, like, shows him the memory, and then Jack's still like, nah, fuck you. Bye.
Yeah, that's in character. I don't know. I don't have a lot to say. It's just like, it's Torchwood being Torchwood at maybe not its best, but it's good.
Yeah,
it's
and
good
I mean, we're not going to have as much to talk about as we will next week. Oh my god, guys! Next week is a double Martha special.
Hell yeah!
Cause Sontarans. And then next week's Torchwood episode, which I guess we're moving a little bit earlier, but next week's Torchwood episode, Reset, is the first of 3 episodes that Martha guests in. So it's going to be a double Martha week.
I will inject that into my veins any week.
Yeah. See, like, it's a solid Torchwood episode. B-, I guess. I don't have too much to say about it.
Yeah, I'd give it a B. It's continuing Torchwood knowing its own toolbox and using it well. And I don't know, it like the Doctor Who episode we covered, it makes me it makes me yearn for the days when I felt like the story tried to be complex.
Yeah. Yeah. Celeste?
Oh, it's my turn.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a pretty all right episode. It does what it needs to do, and it does that pretty well. There's definitely some good character moments with Jack. I think Adam's concept as a whole is interesting. Oh, you also obviously have amazing Reese moments because he gets put through the ringer in this episode
Yeah, our
again,
boy.
like
Yeah,
every episode.
Reese has the sad moment of like he grows in prominence throughout series 2, but he does not become an official member until Children of Earth, which obviously has its own thing that happens, and then fucking Miracle Day, which sucks ass. Justice for Reese.
Yeah, and so I'd say overall, I'd give it a 7.75 out of 10.
Fair enough. Yeah. So next week, we will be discussing Series 2, Episode 6, Reset, in our Double Bill Martha special. Actually, we're going to have 2 weeks in a row that's a Double Bill Martha special, because she's in Doctor's Daughter, too. Man, I line these up perfectly. Fuck. God damn. That wasn't intentional, but damn, I'm good at this. So yeah, until then, you can follow the podcast on Twitter at B2TARDISPod. You can support us on Patreon for things like early episode releases, bonus episodes, which we'll probably have one coming up somewhat soon. I'll probably schedule it in a week that we're not doing 3 episodes, because we're going to be doing 3 episodes both next week and the week after it. But so like mid-October-ish, probably on the next one. Yeah. I'm Jeff. You can find me on Twitter at WheatleyDL and on Twitch at WheatleyDLT.
I'm the Skylar Donna. You can find me on Twitter at skyhigh9_5 for all your mediocre memeing needs.
I'm Celeste. You can find me at our new which we just changed. Sorry, no more the old one. We are now at Quixotic Queers. Yay!
Neat. And we'll see you all next week.